Tonight,
I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. That's what I am.
I'm not going to be lectured by someone that uses the Bible to justify abortion.
why faith is taking center stage in Georgia's Senate races. Plus, a divide among Democrats in the House.
I think it's going to require figuring out what agenda we have in common.
Will the party overcome the split between moderates and progressives as more congressional Republicans join them in January? And why some in Israel worry about how a Joe Biden presidency will handle Middle East policy. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The fate of the United States Senate soon turning to the hands of voters in Georgia. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, voter registration is officially over and early voting for Georgia's Senate runoff starts December 14th, just a few days away. Voters there determining not only who will fill Georgia's 2 U.S. Senate seats, but also deciding Washington's balance of power. CBN's Eric Phillips traveled recently to Georgia to cover the campaign. Eric, as a southern state with a deep religious base, the faith vote is seen as extremely key.
Well, that's true, John, and the stakes are so incredibly high right now. There are millions being spent on both sides to get out the vote on January 5th. But how should Christians view this? Well, there are differing perspectives, even within the body of Christ.
It's very important because unless something changes, we're staring down the barrel of a Joe Biden presidency. I think for believers, it means everything.
I think we have to make sure that our voting is rooted in the values of the gospel.
No matter who you ask, the consensus is the Senate runoff election in Georgia is pivotal, especially for Christians. Ralph Reed heads the conservative Atlanta-based Faith and Freedom Coalition. He says Christians are called by God for such a time as this.
And he has placed us in the United States right now at this hour to be faithful witnesses to his glory and his goodness.
Reed says he wants to use the massive voting strength of evangelicals to tip the scales in favor of Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue because of what's at stake if the other side wins, including Israel's sovereignty.
Massive tax increases to gut the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which protects our First Amendment right to freedom of religion. Raphael Warnock is pro-abortion. He says that abortion on demand is entirely consistent with his view as a Christian minister. I don't know how you can support an agenda that extreme.
I always fight for their right to be wrong.
Reverend Billy Honor is a faith organizer in Georgia and has been pushing voters, particularly in historically marginalized communities, to engage by mail since 2018, when Democrat Stacey Abrams narrowly lost her bid for governor to Republican Brian Kemp.
I'm a gospel-centered type of civic-minded person. I've always said that, but mine is actually rooted in the gospel, and that is the Gospel of Luke, where he says that Jesus, I've come to open up the prison to those that are bound. Jesus says, I've come to say to all of them that this is your time.
Honor agrees Christians are called to action, but differs on what that means.
Who's wanting to open up hospitals in rural communities, and who's wanting to close them? Right? Who's wanting to expand access to health care, and who's wanting to reduce it, right? Who's wanting to expand access to unemployment insurance during this time of pandemic, and who wants to foreclose on it?
He says all people of faith, even Christians, won't vote the same way, a point Reed acknowledges as well. But both are working hard to make sure believers get to the polls.
You got one more vote, that the job isn't done yet.
And I pray for us to continue to be found faithful.
And Ralph Reed recognizes that this is an election, as he calls it, of participation, not persuasion. In other words, whichever side gets out more of its base to the polls on January 5th will likely win. No matter how you slice it, though, the Christian vote makes up a crucial part of the voting bloc. John.
All right, CBN's Eric Phillips. Thank you so much, Eric. Well, for more now, we turn to Jack Jenkins, national reporter for Religion News Service. Jack, always great to have you. Now, Georgia's a southern, historically red state that went blue in November. How important, Jack, is the faith vote in light of these 2 Senate races in January?
Well, I think it's crucial for either side. I mean, it might be better to phrase it as the faith's vote, because while you have any number of Christians in the state of Georgia, you have very different perspectives on what it means to be a Christian in the state of Georgia, which is coming up over the course of this debate. And that's why you've seen many Republicans kind of attacking the faith statements of Reverend Warnock in particular, because he occupies this more liberal and progressive theological persuasion. But it really does seem, as you heard in that previous segment, that neither candidate can win without turning out their base. And both of their bases, whether it's evangelical Protestants who are white, or African-American Protestants, or any number of other faith groups, they won't be able to win without them, especially in a special election where turnout can be low.
It goes against the grain of, I guess, the status quo thinking, but Reverend Raphael Warnock has doubled down on the idea that he is a pro-life or pro-choice pastor, rather. What kind of ammunition does that give Senator Kelly Loeffler and Republicans?
Right. So this has been an interesting conversation because obviously debates over abortion in religious contexts are not new, and that has been a heated topic for quite some time. So him identifying proudly and repeatedly as a pro-choice pastor, allows them to kind of attack him from that perspective. Although it has put them in an interesting place because, for instance, Doug Collins, a congressman from Georgia, he said back just a few months ago that attacking someone's faith was inappropriate when he was referring to Amy Coney Barrett when she was nominated to the Supreme Court. And then just a few months ago, just a couple of weeks ago, he said, he was attacking the faith of Ralph Warnock, said he cannot believe that a pro-choice pastor exists and that it's a lie from the bed of hell and that it should be sent back to Ebenezer Baptist Church. So it puts Republicans in a bind where attacking a pastor whose public statements have been delivered from the pulpit over the last few years puts them perhaps incongruous with the argument they've made for years now that attacking faith is inappropriate in the public sphere.
Jack, will the fact that Joe Biden was the certified winner of Georgia drive out more conservative Christians to the polls in these Senate races?
It might, and I think it plays a lot in terms of how they respond to the president. But the fact that Joe Biden did win Georgia has certainly become a factor. It's been interesting to see how much of a factor, and I think it's really telling that Ralph Reed has definitely gotten it down there. And similar groups are hosting what are called barnstorming tours to help rally support among evangelical Christians for Republicans in particular. It really is kind of a wild card, though, in terms of whether or not the presidential results will hurt or help turnout. My gut tells me that ultimately, the idea that you need to keep the Senate will drive a lot of Republicans to the polls and conversely drive a lot of more liberal Christians to the polls as well. And so I would guess that there would be higher turnout, particularly among religious groups, because they are some of the most organized. And it's worth noting that on the progressive side, you have groups like Stacey Abrams, who is the child of two Methodist ministers, who has also said that she is guided by her faith to do what she does. And so I think there's just going to be as much turnout as you can get in a special election. Faith groups are going to drive a lot of it this go round.
All right, Jack Jenkins, national reporter for Religion News Service. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, as President Donald Trump calls for the Supreme Court to look at his claims of a rigged election, Joe Biden keeps on adding new members of his presidential team. The latest reportedly being Ohio Congresswoman Marcia Fudge as Housing Secretary and Tom Vilsack to make a return as Secretary of Agriculture, a role he held during the Obama administration. Today, Biden introduced retired General Lloyd Austin to America as his nominee for Defense Secretary. If confirmed, Austin will be the first African-American to hold that position. Well, in just a few weeks, a new Congress will be sworn in on Capitol Hill. Although Democrats will still control the House, party leaders could be losing control with a deep divide over the direction Democrats are heading. So where does that rift leave Joe Biden? Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener reports.
Democrats can expect 2 more years of controlling the House of Representatives, albeit with fewer members in 2021. It is a bittersweet election reality that has sparked infighting among party members. Although the first gavel won't fall until January 3rd, a battle is already brewing.
You saw voters across the country in all kinds of districts reject the socialist agenda.
Democrats aren't only fighting with Republicans.
Everybody predicted that the Republicans would lose 15 to 20 seats. Not one incumbent lost. On the Democrat side, more than a dozen
lost.
But also within their divided ranks.
We still have the power of the majority.
While House Speaker Nancy Pelosi may see the glass as half full, those under her leadership are pointing fingers.
And we need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again.
With moderates complaining about progressive campaign slogans and both sides publicly litigating the losses.
Why is she wrong?
Not a single member of Congress that I'm aware of campaigned on socialism or defunding the police in this general election.
Recenter politics for the working class in the United States of America.
Liberal lawmakers pushing back, insisting the progressive push mobilized the base and clinched the win for Biden. Come January, assuming Pelosi gets to keep the gavel,
I can't imagine a scenario where there's going to be this huge uprising.
It will be up to her to bring rival factions together, given the thin majority that leaves little room for error.
What it means is it's going to require more coalition building. It's going to require figuring out what agenda we have in common.
There's still going to be some push and pull between the establishment wing in the House, the Nancy Pelosi or Steny Hoyer from Maryland, versus, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad, if you will.
Now confronted with a shrunken majority,
I have the pleasure of announcing key nominations and appointments.
House leaders are reportedly discouraging members from working for a Biden administration for fear Republicans could nab their vacant seats.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules?
As for the rivalry within, Democrat strategist Doug Thornell believes the party will come together when it counts.
We've had these types of, intra-party squabbles in the past. It typically works itself out, and I think it's important that everyone just respect one another.
Deciding which agenda to pursue first will be part of the challenge. Progressives want health care reform and elements of the Green New Deal at the top of the list. Others argue a focus on the virus, economy, and kitchen table issues will be the key to unity and success. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
All right. Thank you, Tara. Well, joining us now is David Brody, CBN chief political analyst. David, Biden's team says they're going to hit the ground running, trying to tackle the pandemic, the economy, and America's interests abroad. David, do you think his party will come together to help advance his proposed agenda, or is the divide growing too deep?
Well, let's be clear, John. They're going to try, but the problem is not just a divide from an ideological standpoint. It might be just a numbers game. I mean, as Tara pointed out, it is a very slim majority for the House Democrats. That's a problem. If they lose 2, 3, 4, roughly, Democrats on a vote, they're done. I mean, they have to keep the majority together. That's very difficult. And then on the Senate side, either Republicans are going to have control, or even if Democrats have control, there are going to be a couple of lone wolves on the Democrat side. So that's going to be a problem for them. So, I think either way, they have an ideological problem and they have a division problem as it relates to just the numbers themselves.
So when it comes to the ideology and the numbers between the moderates and progressives, with whom will Joe Biden stand?
Well, I will see. I mean, I think at this point, it seems like he's going center left. He's not going far left. And so that would be, I guess you would call it good news if you're somewhere as an independent in this country, a moderate, even a kind of a soft conservative, if you will. So I think that's where he's going at this point. But look, I think ultimately, I think Joe Biden has got a lot of work to do. I think he's going establishment with a lot of these picks.
David, President Trump's still challenging the election results, tweeting today one word, which was overturn. Meanwhile, some in his party are already looking ahead to 2024. Along those lines, a new Politico Morning Consult poll out today shows 76% of Republicans believe Trump will run again for president in 4 years. David, is this where all of that is heading?
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I think 76% in that Morning Consult number is low. I don't think there's any question about it that if it doesn't work out for Donald Trump in 2020 here, you can be sure that he's going to run in 2024. As a matter of fact, go ahead and bookmark this tape, John. Put it in your vault. I don't know if you have a vault, John, but if you've got one, let's put it in the Faith Nation vault. I would say he's going to run in 2024. Why? What's the main reason? He doesn't like to lose. And he especially doesn't like to lose if he feels like he's been cheated out of losing, and that's exactly what he thinks.
Well, cue the tape. Well, back to the 2020 election. The Supreme Court rejected Pennsylvania's case seeking to invalidate mail-in votes in that state. Has the president, David, run out of options when it comes to legal challenges, or does this all boil down to the Texas Attorney General's lawsuit in just a few seconds?
Yeah. No, right. I think it's the Texas lawsuit or bust as it relates to the legal lawsuits for sure. Donald Trump called it this is the big one, and I think most legal scholars agree. And even Alan Dershowitz, who I spoke to today, says it's a Hail Mary. But he also said sometimes Hail Marys actually get completed. So we'll see.
Like a rigorous football game. CBN's David Brody, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, John.
Well, international religious freedom and U.S. foreign policy, how a Trump administration executive order is playing out around the world.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Well, there is a push here in Washington to advance religious liberty in U.S. foreign policy with the goal of securing religious freedom for everyone, everywhere. Today, faith leaders convened for a virtual event on that matter. CBN's Ben Kennedy is here now with the details. Ben, the push comes as concerns grow over an increase in faith-related persecutions.
Yeah, John, you're right. In fact, the threat to religious freedom actually is increasing over the past few years and continues to rise around the world. Let's show you some of the data. Pew Research Center released data revealing government restrictions on religion hitting the highest level since 2007. In fact, laws, policies, and actions by officials that impinge on religious beliefs and practices has actually climbed. The number of countries with high or very high levels of government restrictions reached a 5-year high, peaking at 56 countries in 2018. The Middle East and North Africa region having the highest median level of government restrictions.
We look at this religious freedom foundational right that if you can get it right as a nation, other human rights will flourish. If you get it wrong, other human rights will diminish. So as such, it's really occupies a very strategic and important space.
We've never been more institutionalized, but we've never seen more persecution. The new Pew reports are out, and there's never been more persecution. So we're getting our act together and how this gets institutionalized, but obviously we've got to go to another level here as civil society, as a government.
Now back to Ambassador Brownback. He said the concept does not work unless it's for everybody, everywhere, and all the time. John?
All right, CBN's Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, coming up, what a change in administration could mean for foreign policy around the world one that has some in Israel on edge.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Well, as more and more countries prepare to administer COVID vaccines, Israel today unveiled who will be the very first person to get it in the Jewish state. As the initial round of Pfizer vaccines arrived at Ben Gurion Airport, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he'll be the first inoculation as an example to others and to encourage Israelis to be unafraid of the shots. Today's shipment contained 1,000 doses of the vaccine. The country will begin distributing them starting December 27th. Well, for 4 years now, the Trump administration has been working to reshape the geopolitical dynamics in the Middle East. Joe Biden's foreign policy team will likely change that approach. So what would that mean for the region? CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has that story from Jerusalem.
Sunday marked the third anniversary of President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. To celebrate, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu put Trump's declaration alongside President Harry Truman's recognition of the newly born state of Israel in 1948.
These two historic proclamations will never be forgotten. They'll never be forgotten by the Jewish people and by the Jewish state. They will be cherished for generations.
However, there are concerns that some of the advances made by the Trump administration could be changed or even reversed. So far, Joe Biden has indicated he would likely keep the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem if he becomes president. But what about other Trump policies in the Middle East? Michael Oren is Israel's former ambassador to the U.S.
With respect to Iran, both the former vice president and his running mate, Senator Harris, have said unequivocally that they intend to renew the Iran nuclear deal of 2015. If Iran returns to the levels of uranium enrichment established by that deal, it's not very difficult for Iran to do, and that means lifting sanctions, and that has profound ramifications for Israel in the Middle East.
Netanyahu also noted other positive moves made by Trump on Israel's behalf.
You recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You recognize Israel's legitimate rights in Judea and Samaria. You proposed a realistic peace plan that acknowledges those rights and maintains Israel's ability to defend itself. You forged the historic Abraham Accords.
Oren believes a Biden administration would not invest in those accords the way the Trump administration has.
I don't think they're going to invest money, for example, in building the Israeli-Sudanese peace, because that belongs to the Trump era. And again, the emphasis will be on the Palestinian issue and not on the Abraham Accords.
On the Palestinian front, Senator Harris has embraced a return to negotiations with the Palestinians and stated, "We are committed to a two-state solution, and we will oppose any unilateral steps that undermine that goal. That signals opposition to building in the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and restoring funding to the Palestinian Authority. From Tehran to the West Bank, it's clear a Biden-Harris administration would set a dramatically different course than what President Trump has for the past 4 years for Israel and the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A Santa takeover in Texas. The reason why one man went a little overboard on his decorations this Christmas when we come back.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Well, finally tonight, a lot of people, of course, decorate their yards for Christmas, but one Texas man is, as CBN News photographer Jerome Young often says, taking it to a whole nother level. Louis Murillo has nearly 1,000 Santas on display. He's doing it for a good cause, though, raising money for a charity called Grace, which is helping families in need this Christmas. Louis' goal is to raise $10,000, and his yard features other Christmas decorations besides Santa. People driving by can even tune in to a special radio station to hear a telling story of the Nativity. Well, that sounds just about right. Thanks so much for joining us for this edition of Faith Nation. Have a great night.